today. We're so happy to have you here. As you can tell, I'm not in my usual surroundings. Where am I? I think that I am in Spring, Texas, which to my understanding is about 30 minutes north of downtown Houston. We are in town. I'm in town because we have a leadership offsite starting in about 4 hours. And I'm somewhere between Houston and where that offsite is in Willis, Texas at a WeWork. So the lighting's not great. The sound might be a little echoey in this room, but this topic is so important that we wanted to squeeze it in as many of you start thinking about end of year giving and your own experiences and your own plans. So we didn't want to delay it a week because we know the plans are happening right now, but just bear with me. Don't have another monitor, so we're monitoring chat on the side. Plus, in about 10, 15 minutes, we're going to try something we've never done before in these webinars, and maybe it's going to go terribly, maybe it's going to go great, but stay tuned for that. So we're all sort of, we're in this together, a little bit riverboat gambling to see how this goes, but should be all right. Quick note, a couple of housekeeping notes before we get started. We love helping you advance your career. One way we do that is our team works hard to submit every webinar for CFRE credits. The way this works is, this is proof for one, by the way, and we've added a question to the survey to certify your participation. You should fill it out in the survey. We don't send you a certificate. It is self-reported, but we will back you up if you get audited. Some of you are going for CFRE approval. Just know that on our website, we have every past webinar all the way back to when we started doing this in March of 2020, 4.5 years ago, which is crazy. Can't believe this. I think this is our 109th webinar. So glad that my voice still holds up. But if you ever need more credits, you can go back and watch them. You can even, I think it still counts if you watch them on double speed. So go check that out. Thanks so much. Holly says she has been audited, so be sure to keep your records. Just as a small note, CFRE auditors are not very scary compared to, say, IRS auditors, so you should be fine. Here's the agenda for today. Intros, we'll deep dive on some research. We'll talk about some gifts to prioritize this year. We'll actually look at some successful solicitations that other nonprofits have sent out. So just a preemptive thank you to the organizations that sent those in. Super, super helpful. Really appreciate you. And then as always, the recordings and the slides will be sent around after today. You can help me because someone will ask about that along the way, and just let them know that yes, it will be sent out. Okay, so very quick intros. My name is Patrick. This is my wonderful co-founder, Jenny. We are pictured here actually last time we were in Houston. So in Willis, Texas. Hopefully the weather is as nice as it was on this day. And we get to, we're very fortunate to work alongside a wonderful team of a little under 200 people all around the country. Before we get off of intros, two things making me happy this week. One is that FreeWill was just named to the National Best Places to Work list based on some feedback from our employees. And so we're super proud of that, and particularly super proud of all the managers throughout the organization who bust their butts all the time. Most of you know this, but your direct manager is the most responsible for your happiness at work. Maybe some of you feel that in a positive way, maybe some of you feel that in the negative way, but we are so proud of our whole team. Any work culture is the founder's responsibility for the first few weeks of a company, and then it is a collective responsibility. So anyway, very, very proud of our team, very excited. Second thing, which makes me happy, which I will just note very quickly, is that honestly, the New York Mets are playing more exciting baseball than my entire adult lifetime, and I'm not that young. So if those of you, especially those of you at religious organizations, I would ask for your prayers for today's game against the Phillies. If you are in Philadelphia, I just apologize. We can be friends again in a week. So two great things in my life. Very, very excited. Sorry about the Brewers, Maddie. We still love you. Okay. Also, FreeWill, for those of you that are wondering, some of you know this, biggest estate planning company in the world, and actually the biggest plan giving solution, trusted by more than 1,500 nonprofit partners, including many of you, including many of the largest, and also including some very small ones. So we just appreciate working with all of you. So big thank you to our partners, as well as to those of you that are praying for the Mets right now. So thank you for that. And we have, as a collective, raised $10 billion for nonprofits to date. And we have over 4 centuries of collective fundraising experience that we put to work every day, trying to make you a little bit smarter, a little bit better at your job, make your job a little bit less stressful, a little bit easier, and help you focus on the things that really matter. Last thing, before we get into the fund strategy, we like to give away some of my favorite books on this. Usually they are books offering new insight into human psychology, into specific sort of economic or social trends that are affecting giving, books that are specifically about philanthropy. And as we head into end of year and you are going to be busy, we're just going to send what I think is potentially the most beautiful book ever written for adults. It's called The Overstory by Richard Power. We will send it to 20 people. Make a note in the survey if you like a chance to send a copy. But we love it. I love it. I don't know if Phoebe, who's on the call, I don't know if Phoebe's read it, but I think when we chatted, she's about to read it. It is so good. #1 bestseller, winner of the Pulitzer Prize in fiction. So don't take my word for it, but it is beautiful. Also, our friend Barack Obama says, it changed how I thought about the earth and our place in it. It changed how I see things. And that always for me is a mark of a book worth reading. So don't take my word for it. Don't even take Barack Obama's word for it. You can take the Pulitzer Committee's word. But it is just, honestly, I'm sort of a crier when books like this. It's so beautiful. You will learn things about the American chestnut you never thought you wanted to know, but actually you did. So the way this works, just to recap, is at the end of the session, we will drop a note in the survey, and you can fill that out, including your address. So we're not monitoring the chat for this, but some of you have read this, and if you've read this, just feel free to recommend it to others in the chat. By the way, not all of you will get this because it's a lottery. We can't afford to send 1,000 copies of books every 2 weeks, but you can get it at your local independent bookstore, and it's awesome. So if you are a Brewers fan with more time on your hands than you expected, go get the book. It's so good. Okay, so how's your week going? A couple things to note here. Generally, people are feeling pretty good, right? So fall is coming. Sorry, the folks at the Library Foundations would like me to remind you that you should also check it out at your local library. So please go check it out there as well. Okay, people are feeling pretty good. It's fall. The weather is beautiful in a lot of places. It's not yet winter. Hopefully, in most places, it's not hurricane season. We're a little less bullish than we were last week on hitting our goals, but if we follow some of the steps that we're going to talk about in this session, you should feel more confident leaving here today than you did at the beginning. And generally, I feel like we should actually be pretty bullish, and I'll talk about that in a moment. But even if you don't do anything differently, the overall economy is setting us up very well for a strong end-of-year gifts. So let's talk about non-cash gifts. Non-cash fundraising, meaning the more you fundraise from non-cash gifts, and the higher percentage of total gifts that are not cash, means overall growth, right? And so a 2018 analysis, which is one of the most important pieces of research ever done in modern fundraising by our friend Dr. Russell James, showed that organizations who strictly sought cash donations grew by just 11% over a 5-year period. Organizations taking any non-cash assets grew by 50%, and organizations that took non-cash assets that included appreciated securities, which is just a fancy way of saying stocks or bonds or investment funds or mutual funds that grew by 66%. So just to say this one more time, this is the most important thing to take away from today. You can just hang up after this. Organizations that took appreciated securities grew 5 times faster than organizations that didn't, okay? You can see this in the research. I love Dr. Russell James. Many of you love Dr. Russell James. At some point, I will sit down and work with him on his color schemes because this is an ugly slide, but we love him. And what you can see here is that based on all of the various levels of funding, you can see obviously smaller orgs grow a lot faster because the base isn't that big. But still, if you're a $10 million plus organization, only cash, 26%, including securities, 43%. 5 million to 10 million, which many of you are in that category, 0% growth over 5 years. That's bad. right? It's bad. 50% growth taking non-cash securities. 3 million to 5 million, 0% taking not cash, 68% taking cash. So just to give you a sense, this is a big difference. Thank you, Ashley. I appreciate that comment. All right. So compared today to where cash organizations, excuse me, let's start this again. Compared to today, where the cash gifts your organization received during year-end fundraising 10 years ago, larger, smaller, or about the same. And what we're seeing here is that people's cash gifts, in many cases, have gotten smaller more often than they've gotten larger. And this is a real issue here. Now, why is this happening? Right? Does anyone have hypotheses? One of the shifts here is that people are, besides having less cash on hand, is that people are using credit cards instead of checks. So the death of the check is actually really hurting cash giving because people are used to smaller transaction on a credit card than they were when they were writing checks. And many Americans don't even have a checkbook anymore. And the head of the Fed in Philadelphia, meaning the sort of regional Fed, predicted that paper checks will be obsolete by the end of 2026. I think that's a little aggressive, but 2029 isn't crazy, right? And so we're watching the withering of people making big cash transactions across the board. So why else is cash not king, as our friend Dr. James sort of suggests and has not coined the phrase, but uses this phrase quite often. The reason is cash gifts result in overall smaller donations. Most donors view charitable giving of cash as something that comes from their disposable income. There's a limited pool for most. Only 2% of all wealth in the US is held in cash. Only 2%. And by the way, when we say cash, we don't mean like the $20 bills in your pocket. We mean static money that's in a checking account or a savings account. All of this counts in that cash 2%. It's extremely small compared to real estate, stock markets, business interests, et cetera, et cetera. By encouraging donors to consider non-cash giving, we expand the perception of what's available to donate, and we expand the size of these gifts. Much, much, much bigger gifts. This is incredibly important. What is the average size of your cash gift at year end? You can see here that many people say, oh, it's about 100, 32%. A lot of people say 250. Now, some of you are doing great at over 1,000. But for most organizations, these gifts just tend to be small and stay small. The other 98% of all wealth is held in assets, what we call non-cash assets, stocks, mutual funds, real estate, retirement accounts, right? Bonds, commodities, et cetera, et cetera. This is a really important point. Thank you so much, Hope. So Hope Goldman says, I just secured my first stock gift from a donor, and it was more than 3 times her gift last year and more than 50% bigger than her previously biggest gift. Thank you, Hope. And congratulations, Hope. This is the fundamental point here, right? The fastest way to increase someone's giving is to change the way they give, right? So end of year, the more people that we can change the way they give, the more likely we are to get bigger gifts. David says, are we counting QCDs from an IRA as cash or non-cash? David, we are counting that as non-cash, and we will talk in great depth about QCDs, one of the most important types of giving this end of year. So thank you for raising it across the board. By asking for cash, we are inherently limiting the gifts we are going to receive. When we encourage donors to give non-cash assets, we expand their perception of what's available to give. And this will help you, as I said, dramatically increase the average size of your gifts this year. When we ask people, how do you predict end-of-year giving in 2024 is going to compare to end-of-year giving in 2023? Survey says 37% say better, 16% say worse, and 48% say no change or I don't know. So predominantly folks are leaning better. Some folks are saying worse. Some people are worried about the role of the election on fundraising. We'll talk more about that in a second because that's an important concern, but one that we can actually manage around using non-cash gifts. So we'll get there as well. Okay, so now we're going to try something that I mentioned earlier, totally new. For about 2 to 3 minutes. So bear with us in case this is a totally miserable experience for you, but it will be over in 3 minutes either way. So my colleague Phoebe, thank you, Phoebe, is going to drop a link in the chat. What is this link? This is an AI assistant that I created over the weekend with the help of Dr. Russell James's research. And if you click on it right now, you can basically tell the assistant about your own organization, whether you are a, excuse me, whether you are a small church in the exurbs of Portland, Oregon, or whether you're an animal shelter in Austin, Texas, like our friends at Austin Pets Alive, or whether you are Harvard University, or whether you are whatever you may be. The one caveat here is that you need a ChatGPT login to access it. Now, that is totally free. So if you already have one, you click it, you'll be able to use it right now. Alexa says she's already using it. Thank you. So great. And if you're not, you can always sign up for ChatGPT. But our guess, by the way, is that about half of you will have logins already. So it should be pretty seamless. You can easily use your Google account to log in, as Ronald says. Thank you, Ronald. But generally, it should be pretty easy, super easy. Thank you, Louise. So take 2 minutes. I'm gonna sort of drink some water, just hang out here really awkwardly, but just say, just tell the assistant, hi, this is my organization, and it's roughly 3 million in revenue a year, and we're in Oklahoma, and just do that right now, and you should get some pretty good feedback on how it might work for you. So you can also use this after the webinar. Melissa says, nice way to work FreeWill, and yes, that is true in case folks want more access. Serena says it's impressive. All right, great. So that is there for you. It's also there for your boss. If you think, man, we need to pivot to non-cash giving, but my boss just doesn't get it. On behalf of bosses everywhere, we're busy. We're not always the smartest, so you can always help us out with tools like this. Okay, so we're going to keep going. You feel free to play with this some more, but let us know, by the way, if you absolutely hated this portion or if you think we should do more of it. But we always get questions like, hi, I'm a small boarding school in New Hampshire. What does this mean for me? And we can never answer all of these questions during the webinar, as you might guess. So go for that. So hopefully this helps. We had a question that is from Garrick. What should we be entering, or what should we be asking? Just say, Anna, just say, hey, how might non-cash, there's actually a button that if you click it, it will start your conversation and go from there. So anyway, it's not going to work for all of you. Some of you have AI things blocked your organization, which we think is a huge mistake, but so it goes. But as predicted, some people loved it, some people hated it. We may try it again and give it, maybe we can, Phoebe, if possible, maybe we can shoot it around in the follow-up email so folks have some more time to do it. Okay, great. Let's go back to this, right? So close it down, come back to me. We're going to talk for another 20 or 30 minutes about non-cash gifts as we do it. All right, let's do it. So we think, let's go back for a second. We think that 2024 is going to be the biggest year ever for non-cash gifts. Biggest year ever, right? So this becomes more important than it was last year. Now, a couple reasons for this. There are 3 reasons that we're going to walk through. 1, unexpectedly strong stock market momentum, right? There's a missing word here. That's on me. I was editing this late last night. It should say unexpectedly strong stock market momentum. The S&P 500 and the Dow Jones, as well as the NASDAQ, have already reached record level highs throughout 2024. Thanks, Patrick. They just got a comment directly to me. Thank you for that. Stocks this year have had their best first 3 quarters of the 21st century, right? Which is, as you can tell, since the year 2001. Important caveat there. Over the last 20 years, the S&P 500 has typically dropped in September. This is quite common. And this year gained 2%, the best September since 2013. This is not what the song is about. And then economists are predicting positive trends to continue through the end of 2024. But as a reminder, no one can predict the stock market, so please don't treat this as financial advice. Just to give you a sense, the S&P since October oops, let's go back 1 second. Yep. Since last year, right? Since a year ago today, up a third, which is fantastic for in the stock market's history, up 21% since January the 1st. So again, just an awesome year from stock market performance. And so what we see here is there is a couple of factors coming out of the stock market performance, which are going to drive non-cash gifts. What are those feelings? We feel wealthier as a society when the stock market is up. There's a lot of positive news, record high, this NVIDIA hit record high, whatever, a feeling of being wealthier. So the country, especially among your wealthier donors who are not sort of hit by things like grocery store inflation to the same degree as your less wealthy donors, are going to feel wealthier. 2, wealth that is not earned, meaning not part of your paycheck, is what we call unearned wealth, right? It's unanticipated often. It feels different. And so people are more willing to give unanticipated wealth. If you win the lottery, you're more likely to give that, even if it's a $50,000 lottery, right? Not 10 million, 50,000, and you make $50,000 in income, you're much more likely to give money when you didn't expect it. And what happens when the stock market goes up? Well, mostly good things, some bad things for folks, like more capital gains tax to be paid and an interest in avoiding these, okay? So second thing, across the economic spectrum, we have very strong job growth, so the economy is rocking. The latest jobs report released last week showed more jobs were added than expected at 254,000 new jobs, which is pretty impressive for a month. Unemployment is dropping to 4.1%. As a reminder, this is astonishingly far below the historical 200-year average. The job market is quite good right now, in part because it's easier for folks to find jobs. The gig economy helps, and things like Indeed and LinkedIn just make it easier to find jobs that are and hire people. So less friction in the job marketplace is quite good. Wages grow at an annual rate of 4%, which boosts household income. And a strong job market and lower unemployment can ease worries about a recession or economic slowdown anytime soon. It doesn't matter if you have a job. If your neighbor lost their job, it might make you a little bit nervous. And so we don't see that happening to a significant degree. And the third reason around why 2024 is likely to be the largest and sort of most successful year for non-cash gifts is actually the increased education and skills among people like you. What we mean by that is that more nonprofits are actively promoting non-cash ways of giving to their supporters. This benefits, obviously, the organizations that are promoting these, as we've already talked about. It also has a really nice positive effect across the board. So if your university is ahead of the game, the university you went to, and they've been now marketing stock gifts for 3 years, it may be that when you go to synagogue and you start thinking about end-of-year giving, well, maybe now we're giving to synagogue in stock, even though they didn't ask for it, because other folks have been asking. So you can actually benefit from this fact that other organizations are asking. The share of non-cash donations grew from 27% in 2013 to 46% in 2021. Now making up nearly half of all itemized charitable contributions. So that is a really, really big jump. In January, 41% of fundraisers reported an increase in non-cash gifts during end-of-year season compared to last year, meaning 2023 was a big increase over 2022, and we expect this increase to keep going. 28% of respondents saw no change, and only 2% of folks reported a decrease in non-cash giving. So only 2% dropped a bit. At FreeWill, we saw a 22% increase, which is a really big chunk year over year, in non-cash gifts in Q3, which most of you know this, but July, August, September, compared to July, August, and September of 2023. So Allison, pardon me, says, is the total amount, Allison says, are gifts from DAFs considered cash or non-cash? Allison, we consider those non-cash gifts, right? Those are different. And in part because most people are donating stocks into their donor advised fund. So treat DAFs as non-cash gifts. Thank you so much. Nicole, that is total amount and not number of gifts, although it's roughly about the same. We obviously expect these numbers to be even bigger approaching end of year. Just to give you a sense of this, we'll show it in a minute, but the largest share of non-cash gifts obviously comes in Q4, end of year. As a bonus, as I mentioned, I'm in the great state of Texas. I went to the gym this morning and yesterday morning, and every single advertisement on the TV is a Colin Aldred or Ted Cruz ad. Every single one. No Clorox, no Lexus, no what's the HEB, no HEB ads down here. It's all political advertising, and it's overwhelming to folks. And you can bet that mailboxes are full. I don't have a Texas number, obviously, so I'm not getting the same level of text messages or phone calls, but you can imagine that across the board, just an enormous sort of saturation, and a lot of people asking for a lot of money. While other nonprofits will be asking for non-cash gifts, political campaigns can only take cash gifts with extremely rare exceptions that are basically not even important enough to talk about. Gifts like donor advised funds cannot go to campaigns. They can only go to 501c3 nonprofits. Gifts like QCDs from older folks cannot go to political campaigns. They can only go to 501c3 nonprofits. So you have zero competition for these gifts from the Senate races, the governor's race, the Harris-Trump race, your local congressional race, your local state house, et cetera. Gifts for DAFs, from DAFs, are especially true here since those funds are specifically earmarked for charity. They've already been given. There's no trade-off at all. And a record-breaking number of small dollar donors have already tapped into their cash reserves to donate to the election, but all of these non-cash gifts remain totally untouched. So there we go. All right, quick note on crypto. We're not going to spend a ton of time on crypto. Crypto is a relatively small percentage of the overall non-cash giving base, but let's just remember that Bitcoin is up 41% YTD year to date and projected to possibly reach a new record high in October. Again, no one's predicting crypto prices. We don't predict stock prices. None of this is financial advice. Ethereum, which is actually more commonly donated in the United States than Bitcoin, is also performing well, up about 2% year to date after a roaring 2023. So lots of value there. When crypto is up, crypto philanthropy is up, so it should stay on your radar, and having a way to take crypto is quite useful. In 2021, when crypto last experienced record growth, donations surged from 4.2 million to almost 70 million year over year. Average crypto donation rose from 3,000 to 10,000 in 2021, and we expect it to be somewhere in the middle of that in 2024. All right, so let's talk about these gifts one-on-one. So do you experience an influx of any of these following gifts at year end? 76% of you say yes to donor advised funds, 57% of you say yes to stock gifts, and 70%, which is pretty remarkable given how new these gifts are, say yes to qualified charitable distributions. So big time influxes, be ready for it, or be even more ready for it if this is you. Half of all non-cash gifts contributed to FreeWill partners, which is the data that we have best access to, occur in Q4 last year. So you can see here, right? Little baby giving in Q1, although we start to see more of that happening. Q2 almost double Q1, Q3 a bit bigger than Q2, and then more than doubling in Q4. So this is a really, really, really big deal. Be ready in Q4. All right, so let's dive in here. QCDs, first and foremost. What are QCDs? Well, QCDs, sometimes referred to as IRA gifts or IRA charitable rollovers, these can be made by any donor who is older than 70 and a half years old. So do the math, means born in 1954, roughly, or earlier. It is a donation that is transferred directly from an individual's retirement account to a qualified charity. And it's an account that allows people to save money for their retirement every year. So most of you know this, but if you have an IRA, it's very similar to a 401k that most of you who are working in the United States will have. And that is an interesting avenue. Traditional IRAs are funded with pre-tax money, which is invested and hopefully grows over time. So these can be quite large, especially, let's recall, someone who's born in 1954. So let's do some simple math, right? Let's say that at 25 is when they got their first job that had an IRA. Well, that's what, 1979? And so that means that the money that was invested in 1979, when the stock market was a tiny, tiny fraction of what it is today, is now grown and grown and grown and grown. In fact, we'll show you how much money is in IRAs in a moment, but it is an enormous amount. Beginning at 73, right? So folks who were born in 1951 or before, IRA accounts holders are required to withdraw some annually called an RMD. And if they don't, they face a penalty from the IRS. So they absolutely have to do it, even if you don't need the money. What are the penalties? Pretty significant. If you don't do it, you still have to take it out, and then you pay a 25% penalty and up to 37% of federal income tax imposed when you take that out, right? So a pretty serious deal here. You don't take it, you might owe 50% tax on that money. Now, let's say you don't feel like you need the money. Too bad, says the government. You still have to take it. The only way to avoid taxes on that money is if you give it to a charity, right? Account holders pay income taxes, and QCDs now are the way to avoid it, and you can give up to $105,000 per year. They are not added to the donor's taxable income as RMDs are, and they do count towards the minimum you have to take out. So it can satisfy the whole RMD. They reduce a donor's overall IRA balance, and it reduces future RMDs. So it's the best way to save money on this. Now, why else are these becoming super important? Well, one, there are a ton of people turning 70 every year. You can see that the baby boomers are moving hard into the 70 plus category, right? And in 57, 56 is the midpoint of that baby boomer era. And so that's happening right now. Those folks are turning a little bit before those folks are turning 70 this year. Obviously, the 55s will turn 70 next year. And this is becoming just an incredibly important component, right? There are more 70-year-olds in the United States than there have ever been at any point in history. QCDs are often the single best way for these folks to give. Please, please, please make it happen. The good news, as usual, gifts from an IRA will be significantly larger than cash gifts. If anyone in the chat has a story about getting IRAs and how big they were compared to previous gifts, we would love to hear it. So feel free to type that in. Okay, as we mentioned, this population is only getting bigger. Look at how much bigger. I mean, this is just astonishing. This is one of the dominant stories in America that we don't talk about enough. Look at how much bigger the American population of over 65 is in 2020 compared to, say, 1990. I mean, it's literally doubling. The American population overall isn't that much larger than it was in 1990. Sure, it's growing, but it's doubled among 65-year-olds, 65 plus. And by the way, this isn't slowing down in the least. If you extrapolate, this is going up and up and up. So be ready. And as I told you, I would show you how much money is in IRAs. If you guessed $14.5 trillion, you were correct, right? So there is an astonishing amount of money in IRAs sitting here. So please, please, please do that. Okay, thank you so much. Oh, I just saw it dropped in. Elizabeth says, we had a donor who was giving $5,000 annually, and once they turned 74, they moved it to an RMD and they started giving $11,000. So big shift there. Patty messaged me to say, let me find Patty's note. We have a donor who gave $25 per year by gift for several years. Then her first IRA gift. How big was the IRA gift? It was it was $2,500. So that gift grew by a factor of 100 times larger when she shifted. Big, big deal. So Lynn says our organization received a $17,500 gift from a donor who had been making $500 gifts, et cetera, et cetera. So I can't keep up with all of the examples, but they are flying in. And you can see donor giving $4,000 annually now gives $40,000. So Sue's got another success story. Just don't take my word for it. Your peers in the conversation are doing this and doing it well. The average IRA balance for an American in their 70s is $287,000. So here's an example. Margie, age 73, donated $100 every year to her favorite charity. Her IRA balance is $280,000. This year, she has to take at least $10,000 out. After learning from the charity that she can donate her RMD directly and avoid taxes her year-end gift increases by a factor of 100x. This is not super uncommon. Stay tuned, by the way, for messaging. We have some folks asking about that. All right, gifts of stock. Thank you for hanging out with us in QCD world. Gifts of stock. When we talk about stocks, we mean a type of investment that represents an ownership share of a company. Most of you know this. We want to get you some baselines. Mutual funds is an index fund, or an ETF, exchange traded funds, is an investment in a group of stocks versus a single stock. Securities is a sort of catch-all term that we use. It's not a very good term because it can be sort of confusing. It means things like bonds, mutual funds, ETFs, other things that are in a market that you can buy and sell, commodities as well. Capital gains taxes are a federal tax on profits realized by the sale of an asset. Could be a home, could be a stock. And note that many states have an additional capital gains tax on top of the federal tax, or they just treat it like income, so you have an income tax on it on top of the capital gains tax. So why would donating stock benefit donors? One, donors who give stock save on two types of taxes. This is a big deal. So when stock is given directly to a charity, you can't sell it and give the money, you give the stock directly to a charity, you avoid all capital gains taxes, and you avoid all state income tax on capital gains when that tax exists, and you receive a federal income tax for the full value of the stock, sometimes a state deduction too. So you're avoiding the taxes, which itself is a big win. And then you're also getting that deduction. So these things happen in combination. And if you're in California or New York or Massachusetts, you're in a higher tax state, your wealthiest donors with really appreciated assets might be saving 50% of the gift on taxes. So big deal. Another example, Diana and Jonah are $25 a month donors to Habitat for Humanity. They want to give more this holiday season, but they're limited by expenses. They receive an email from Habitat at year-end educating them on why donating stock is the smartest way to give. They decide to give $2,500 in appreciated stock directly to Habitat, and this allows them to avoid significant capital gains taxes and get a charitable deduction for the full value, lowering their tax bill for 2024, helping build homes for people that need it. Win, 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 right? Helping Habitat's fundraising team hit their goals. Now, why are these good for nonprofits? Well, as you might have guessed, and you saw earlier, organizations that took appreciated assets grew 66% over a 5-year period, which most of your organizations aren't growing at this pace. So this is a really big win. Donors who understand the tax savings and impact of stocks are likely to do it again. So you get that first stock gift, it's probably one of 7 over the lifetime of that donor. They're likely to give more. As we mentioned, these gifts are way, way bigger. Average stock gift is 130 times larger than an average cash gift, 130 times larger. And you might think, well, only rich people give stock gifts. Not true. In fact, maybe some of you have a story. We saw one earlier in the call, but if you have any stories about how you got larger gifts from stock gifts, please drop them in the chat. People would love to learn from you. So please do that as well. Okay, donor advised funds. These are the fastest growing type of charitable giving vehicle. Donors put money into an investment fund with a sponsoring org, excuse me, and then recommend grants to a charity at a later point. They receive an immediate tax benefit, even if the money doesn't go to charities for years, but the money actually goes pretty quickly to charities. Nearly 2 million DAF accounts are managed by over 3 million Americans. Sometimes couples have one. My parents have one account between the two of them, and they make gifts to their favorite charities. Some of them are often on this call. So thanks, Mom and Dad, for giving to places like the Met, to my dad's high school, which is a great place called Chaminade, Long Island, to a bunch of social justice organizations. And I talked to them about this. They sort of sit at the table and they figure it out together. It's very cute. They're also tied with stock gifts for the most commonly received non-cash gift in 2023. More money sitting in DAFs than ever before. This is a big deal. There was $230 billion in donor advised funds in 2022. We are awaiting anxiously the report from NPT, which comes out every year, and we will do that again in 2024. Very quick aside, because we love NPT, the great folks at NPT and I are presenting at the CGP conference, which is going to be in Orlando, fingers crossed, at the end of October. So if you're at CGP and you're interested in DAFs, come hang out. We're going to spend a whole hour diving in on DAFs with some breaking research. So That should be super, super fun. Payouts to nonprofits have more than sextupled in a decade, gone from 8.5 to $52 billion in 10 years. So this is on the rise, on the march, and continuing to grow. Grants recommended to nonprofits and contributions into DAFs grew by 10% in 2022, which was a miserable economic year. So you can see we're growing no matter what. All right, couple thoughts here. DAFs are different from other non-cash gifts. If you're hosting events, you're giving away things of value, they cannot be used for bifurcated payments, meaning you can't pay a little bit of the table with the DAF and a little bit in cash. Stock giving and crypto can be used for the whole ticket. Most people do not know this, but you can do it. Donors save on capital gains for the whole gift and get a big but not full tax deduction. All right, so how do DAFs benefit nonprofits? Well, this money contributed to DAFs is specifically designated for philanthropic purposes. Excuse me. Grants can only be recommended to 501c3 charities. It means that donors cannot use the funds for things like political contributions, etc. Everything can be given into a DAF, stock, securities, crypto, etc. And then you just get cash as the nonprofit, but technically it's a non-cash gift. 62% of nonprofits believe DAFs make it easier for donors to give complex gifts, which is a big win. Especially significant in 2024, as a bull market enables DAF holders to give even larger gifts. William says, can QCDs be put into a donor advised fund? No, they cannot. So great question. I'm sure other people were wondering. Thank you, William. Does your organization receive an influx? Remember, we saw this. DAFs are the #1 surge at end of year. So that will be a big deal. How do we get more of them? Well, a couple things here. Simply let people know and ask for them. It's not magic. Ask for things that you want, and you are more likely to get them. 98% of organizations actively soliciting DAF gifts received at least one of them in 2023. Those that were not, only 2% didn't get any gifts, right? So your 98% success rate, we promise. You can see here, if you are actively promoting these, how many did you get? The most common number was more than 100, which is a ton of money. The least common number was none. Now, if we said you weren't doing it, what if you weren't? Well, if you weren't, the most common number was 1 to 5, and the least common number, or excuse me, the second most common number was 0. So let's go back here. 2% of you are getting 0 gifts when you ask for them, and 20% of you are getting 0 gifts when you don't ask for them. So big, 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 big deal. How do we promote DAFs? Generally, we recommend things like encouraging folks to give through a donor advised fund, a link on your website, right? Here's some more information that you can use. I won't read it all out because we have just 10 minutes to go, but pretty important. Some of the best ways to promote it on your ways to give page, on your print and digital newsletters, just a little note, on 101 emails, on print and e-appeals, on your donate page, your actual donate page. Why? We don't want someone to give 50 bucks when they could give 5,000 out of their donor advised fund. That is a huge loss. Obviously, social media, etc. Couple tips and examples before we wrap up here with 10 minutes to go. So how do we ask people? Well, back to our dear friend Russell James. He of brilliant academic skills, and we love him. Middle tier design skills, to be generous. This is true of your in-person conversations and your donor outreach. So what do we say? We say things like we use more stories, more simple language, not formal, not technical terms. Don't say make a transfer of assets. Do say make a gift of stock or assets. In the same study, Dr. James found that even though people say it doesn't, mentioning tax benefits significantly increases charitable intent. So if we ask you, do you want to receive a tax deduction to make a gift that pays you income for life, which some of you will recognize as a CGA, 50% said interested now. Only 8% said never interested. In contrast, if it said when we said, do you want to make a gift that pays you income for life without mentioning tax benefits? Fewer than 1/3 said interested, right? So tax benefits really, really, really matter. 20% said they would never be interested. So donors will say, hey, tax benefits aren't the reason I give, but it does change the way they give, and it changes the amount that they give. So we do want to mention these. All right, let's see some examples of some of the best in the business. So our friends at Cure Blindness Project, they have a footer in their email newsletters. it says HCP now offers tax-smart giving options. Consider a gift of stocks, donor-advised funds, qualified charitable distributions, or cryptocurrency. Change a life by supporting HCP's work to eradicate global blindness. Big, big work, right? So just look at, imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. So take a look at this and use it in your own work. You can see Lupus Research Alliance with their educating donors. It talks about inviting people to join the effort through a gift of appreciated stock. Gives you more resources, etc. Join them and donate stock, right? It has this social proof element. Other people like you are doing it. Please, please make sure to make it happen. Our friends at Clean Water Action, by the way, Clean Water Action does amazing work. If you ever want to donate on your own, you can do this. Here is a direct mail reply form from Clean Water Action. And you can see here on the back, on the front, it says, different amounts typically. And then on the back of this, which you can hold on to, it gives you a bunch of different ways to do this. And so you can really include this in your action. And as many of you have seen in this session, some of these gifts that will come back in non-cash are going to be just so much larger than what you saw in the cash side. So thank you. Latrice, I think, is on the call from Clean Water Action. Shout out Latrice and the whole team. You all are doing great, great work. Okay, we have just a few minutes. We're going to share a couple of resources. Most importantly, my wonderful colleague, Phoebe, who, just quick shout out to Phoebe, has put enormous amount of work and research into this. So it's an act of love to be able to put in 75 slides on short order in order to help you all be successful in end of year. So big thank you, Phoebe. Meanwhile, Phoebe's in Austin getting inundated, as she tells me, by political ads. So Phoebe, make it through the next 30 days, and you'll go back to car commercials and whatnot. So big thank you, Phoebe. But make a note in the survey if you're interested in this book. Just again, I think it's one of the most beautiful things ever created. So feel free to give it a shot. Really, really love it. So do that. George says interested in the book. George, fill out the survey. That's how you'll get it. So click a note in the chat. Please do that. At Thursday at noon, we are doing, we're going to do a walkthrough of what we call our Smart Giving Suite. So if people are interested in technological solutions that can help you get more of these gifts, you don't need any tech to start doing this. Please don't feel like if you're not buying this from FreeWill, you're not going to have any success. But this is a thing that can really help accelerate your path and help you get more of these gifts. And our team obviously puts a lot of love and effort both into building the tools, but then helping you with support, help with campaigns, all these things. So we'd love for you to have this here. Melody says her team just launched our FreeWill Smart Giving tool. So hopefully, Melody, it's going well for you. And that is on Thursday. So if you can join, come hang out that. Jim says, how do we accept stock gifts without a brokerage account? Jim, tools like these will actually help liquidate them for you if you want. If not, you actually have to set up a brokerage account. Janice says, do you have the link? So in the survey, there's an RSVP note. Just click yes, and we will send you the link. So that is that. Also, the AI tool that we shared will be sent in an email follow-up if you fill out the survey. I also just want to note there are a couple of additional survey questions today about your experience with donor advised funds. That is super helpful to us as we continue to build new research and help inform the whole community. So if you feel like you can take an extra 35 seconds and answer a couple of questions, we'll be super grateful, and it will really help the rest of the sector and obviously help you as we can report back. So please, please, please do that. And just click that link if you haven't already. It's the only thing we ask of you today, so that we can get some feedback and get some more knowledge that we can share across the board. Okay, on October 22nd, which is in 2 weeks, we are doing a next session, and we're teaming up with the folks at Candid. So Candid, formerly known as GuideStar, so many of you know these folks. You have your profile, your organization's profile on Candid, formerly GuideStar again. And a lot of people just, this stuff really matters, right? How you look on Charity Navigator, how you look on Candid. And so, so we are going to team up with the folks at Candid, and my dear friend Lauren Winter Hansen will be leading that. as well. So that should be really interesting. If you'd like to join that, feel free. So yes, Candid, a lot of people get confused. Candid is a recent rebranding of GuideStar, in my understanding. So check that out. But anyway, we are about to wrap up. We don't have time to dive into questions, but we did send you an AI assistant that can answer all of your questions about non-cash gifts based on all the best knowledge. So give that a shot. And if you still have questions after using that, let us know. But that's a totally new experience. So if you have any thoughts on that as well, let me know. You can reach me on LinkedIn, very easy to find. I'm Patrick at Patrick Schmitt, FreeWill. You can also shoot me a note if you're interested at Patrick at FreeWill. Always happy to hear from folks and often answer a couple questions afterwards. But all this is to say, we know you are gearing up for end of year. We know there's a lot of hard work over the next 2.7 months, roughly. And just wanted to say a huge thank you for all the work you're doing. It is a big source of joy for us to be able to support you in this. We love getting to see not just you hitting your goals, but also the impact you're having with all those resources. And so a big thank you. Hopefully see you a couple times in the near future, but if you need anything at all, just reach out.